So with one game to go of this championship season, this is how the bottom of the championship is shaping up. Still all to play for going into the final weekend. In today's video, we're going to be taking one final look into the bookies relegation odds for the end of the season to see just how likely each side is to be relegated at this point. We'll also be touching on Stoke and QPR as well in this video. Both sides confirmed their safety in the championship over the weekend, so they're worth touching on. I'd love to hear from you guys who you think's going down in the comments down below. But without any further ado, let's jump in. Of course, we've known about Rotherham's relegation for quite some time, having only won 4 of 45 matches this season. It has been a really miserable season for the Millers, just 24 points accumulated all season long. I think that next season will be a big rebuilding task in League One to get that squad competitive again and shake this season, which has been so disastrous for them. They go into the final day of the season playing a Cardiff side who also don't have anything to play for. Coming in 23rd place, we've then got Huddersfield. Now, while they're not officially relegated, the bookies are no longer offering odds on the Terriers to be relegated because, let's face it, it's pretty much nailed on going into the final game week of the season. They're currently on 45 points. The only side that they can now catch who are outside the relegation zone is Plymouth, and for them to overtake Plymouth, there'd need to be a 15-goal swing on the final day of the season. So Plymouth would need to be absolutely annihilated by Hull, and Huddersfield will need to win heavy away at Ipswich. I know the Championship can be an absolutely bonkers league, but let's face it, that's just not going to happen, and it will be League One football for Huddersfield next season. The game against Birmingham over the weekend was a must-win from Huddersfield's perspective. They didn't get that result over the line in the end, and ultimately, that's been their major problem all season. How many draws there's been for this Huddersfield side? 18 all season. They've only won 9 matches all season. That's the second worst record in the league. They've conceded 75 goals, the second worst defensive record in the league, only to Rotherham again. Ever since Warnock's departure earlier on in the season, it had the feeling of a relegation doomed sort of campaign for Huddersfield, and the managerial changes they've made throughout the season just haven't worked for them. But this is where we get into the really interesting stuff when discussing the final relegation spot, because this is the place in the Championship which really is all to play for going into the final weekend. Now, going off the bookies odds, and I think that if you'd ask most people, the most likely side to be relegated is Birmingham as of recording. They're the side that are sat in 22nd in the table at the moment. They're on 47 points and in need of picking up a result on the final day of the season against Norwich as well. They're also in need of at least one result to go their way. It seems like a fair bit needs to happen, but do you know what? I still don't think it's out of the realms of possibility that Blues do manage to survive on the final day of the season. Let's not forget, Birmingham have been in this situation before. The thing that goes in Birmingham's favour on the final day is the fact they're playing at St Andrews. I think that had their last game of the season been away from home, I almost might be writing them off a little bit. Their record away from home this season has been really shoddy. That's why I feared for them a little bit going into that game against Huddersfield, and failing to win those games against Huddersfield and Rotherham really have hampered Blues coming into this final game week of the season. But it's an interesting test up against Norwich, who, albeit aren't completely confirmed in the top 6, so the Canaries still have something to play for, but there would need to be a huge goal difference swing on the final day for Hull to overtake Norwich. So Norwich, I think, will still be up for that game against Birmingham, but in the back of Norwich players' minds, they'll know that a loss, maybe not the worst thing in the world, because they're probably still going to make the top 6 even if they do lose that match. In the case of Birmingham, they really do need to win this one. A draw could still keep them up, but they'd then be relying on Hull putting quite a few goals past Plymouth to swing the goal difference in their favour. But a win for Birmingham on the final day really would make things interesting. It would put them up to 50 points, and then anyone up to Blackburn, who are up in 19th, could be in danger of going down if Blues do get that result over the line. Their record at St Andrews is by no means flawless, but it's pretty decent, especially when compared to their away record. They've only lost 7 home matches this season, Birmingham. They've won 9 and drawn 6, and even under Gary Rowett, they have picked up some big results at St Andrews against the likes of Preston and Coventry. They kept clean sheets in both of those games, let's not forget. The odds are against Blues right now, but it's not completely lights out just yet. Just above Birmingham in the bookies' estimations, it's then Plymouth. They've got relegation odds of 3-1, so significantly more likely to survive based on the bookies' current odds, but they still have a big job to do on the final day of the season. Now, Plymouth will know that a win on the final day, regardless of what happens elsewhere, will be enough to keep them in the league. So they do have survival within their own hands. What makes things difficult is Hull are in need of a win on the final day if they want to leapfrog West Brom or Norwich and make it into the top 6. So both sides gonna really need to go for it in that fixture. Plymouth will know that a draw might not even be enough to keep them up if Birmingham win and the sides above them pick up points as well. Obviously, Plymouth, on the back of suffering back-to-back losses on the road, a 3-0 loss against Stoke and a 1-0 loss against Millwall, does throw them into this quite tricky situation. The advantage they have in a similar line to Blues is the fact that they are at home on the final day, albeit against a Hull side who will be bang up for that fixture, I'm sure. Plymouth's home record at Home Park in the first half of the season really was quite consistent, but since January onwards, it has been quite spotty. When I did my end of season predictions a few weeks ago, I had it in my head that Hull would no longer be in the top 6 race come the final day of the season, which would have made this fixture a hell of a lot easier for Plymouth in my opinion, but the fact that Hull still have an outside chance of sneaking into the top 6, it does put a lot more pressure on that fixture all of a sudden, especially going into it knowing that they really could do with all 3 points. What is interesting, in 20th place, the bookies then have Blackburn with relegation odds of 18-1. Now, in real life, Blackburn are above Sheffield Wednesday. They have a superior goal difference to the Owls, but based on the bookies' relegation odds, they're more likely to be relegated on the final day than Sheffield Wednesday are, and I think that's a result of how the fixtures have sort of worked out for Blackburn, really. Now, in order for Blackburn to be relegated on the final day, quite a lot would need to go against them, but this is the Championship, and it's certainly not out of the realms of possibility. For Blackburn to be relegated, Birmingham would need to win on the final day, Plymouth would need to win on the final day, Sheffield Wednesday would need to pick up at least 1 point against Sunderland, and Blackburn would need to lose against Leicester. Quite a bit that goes into that, but nothing that's completely out of the realms of possibility, like I'm saying. Now, the interesting piece of info from a Blackburn perspective is that they go into that final day of the season away at Leicester, knowing a point will guarantee their survival in the Championship. So how they approach that game will be quite interesting. We've already seen Blackburn taking points off Leeds away from home, a brilliantly disciplined away performance from John Eustace's side in that game. If they manage to frustrate Leicester in the same way on the final day, which they are very capable of, especially considering Leicester have probably already won the league by then, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a little bit of madness on the final day at the King Power. But with relegation odds of 18-1 at the moment, the bookies do think that it's very unlikely for Blackburn to be relegated from this stage, but it's not completely out of the picture. Rovers fans, right now with a week to go, how are you feeling about your survival chances? And then up in 19th, going off the bookies odds, it's Sheffield Wednesday, now with relegation odds of 20-1. What an unbelievable job the Owls have done over these last few months, especially to claw themselves out of the bottom 3, even when they've had so many setbacks throughout the season. For the vast majority of the campaign, they've been in that bottom 3, but when it's been crunch time, the Owls have produced some big performances, especially over the weekend. That 3-0 thumping against West Brom does leave them in a very good position heading into the final day, where they travel to Sunderland, the Sunderland side who have nothing to play for and have been on a real slide lately. Sheffield Wednesday in quite a similar situation to Blackburn, where they know that a point on the final day, regardless of what happens elsewhere, will be enough to keep them up this season. Now, things do get a little bit fruity, especially if Sheffield Wednesday were to lose that game against Sunderland, especially considering Sheffield Wednesday do have by far the worst goal difference of these sides that are battling for that spot in 22nd at the moment. So what do the permutations look like in order for Sheffield Wednesday to be relegated this season? Well, they'd need Birmingham to win on the final day, Plymouth to win on the final day, and Wednesday would need to lose on the final day. So 3 results there, which would all have to go against Wednesday for them to be relegated at this point. I have to be honest though, the way that Sunderland are going at the moment, how fired up Wednesday will no doubt be for that game, I'd be very surprised if they did lose at the Stadium of Light. But with that being said, pressure on the final day can do funny things to sides, and we have seen crazy turnarounds like that in the past in the Championship. But I think I do agree with the bookies' estimations that of all the sides who could still be relegated, Wednesday are probably the least likely, and at 20-1 the odds back that up. I also think it is worth touching on some of the clubs that confirmed their safety in the Championship over the weekend, the first of which being Stoke. A massive result away at Southampton means that Steven Schumacher's side will be playing Championship football next season, and it has been a big effort from Stoke over these past few weeks especially. It felt like that result they had on the 2nd of March against Middlesbrough was a bit of a turning point in their season, under Schumacher especially. Prior to that point, they'd been on a really bad run of form. Felt like the pressure was cranking up on him even more, and had they not won that game, I don't know if he'd still be their manager today. But since that point, Stoke have won 5 of their last 11 matches, and that has been enough to get them up to 53 points, which will confirm their status as a Championship club going into next season. On the whole, it has been a bit of a disastrous season for Stoke really, especially considering all the promise and hype coming into this year. With a bit of a squad rebuild under Alex Neil, there was a lot of expectations there that maybe this season would finally be the year where they start to kick on a little bit. Didn't quite materialise that way, and they were dragged into this relegation scrap, but a relegation to League One would have been absolutely disastrous for Stoke. I mean, no doubt about that. Confirming your survival with the game to go, you can't have any complaints about that, given how the rest of the season's gone. And then we also have to touch on Queen's Park Rangers as well, and I tip my hat to QPR, because what a colossal performance that was against Leeds United. Now, QPR had almost got themselves over the line prior to that result against Leeds anyway, but the win does confirm their safety going into the final week of the season, and I'd go as far to say that's their best performance of the season. Absolutely relentless against Leeds. They didn't allow them much time to breathe on the ball, and they were absolutely ruthless in taking their chances going forward. Ilias Chair playing at his sparkling best. Thought of what QPR could potentially become next season if Cifuentes stays. They managed to keep that squad together and add a few bits here or there. Is massively exciting as well. Tactically, I think Cifuentes has been one of the best managers in the Championship this season, and I think he should be right up there in terms of manager of the season candidates, in terms of the massive turnaround he's managed at QPR. Thinking where they were in the opening months of the season under Ainsworth compared to now, the brand of football, the defensive discipline, it's all fallen into place for QPR. But with back-to-back wins against Preston and Leeds, they have confirmed their survival, and yeah, what a few months it's been for that club. But guys, there you have it. That is what the bookmakers are currently suggesting for the end of the season. They do have Birmingham as the most likely side to be relegated, but do you know what? I've still got a bad feeling about Plymouth. In my head at the moment, I think Plymouth are more likely to lose against Hull than Birmingham are to lose against Norwich, which really could put the cat amongst the pigeons, especially if Blues somehow managed to win that game against Norwich as well, which would then put Plymouth into the bottom 3. As always, I want to hear all your thoughts in the comments down below. It should be an absolute cracker of a final weekend in the Championship. Other than that though, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like, and I'll see you all in the next one.